Just days ago, the press and the pundits had declared this candidacy dead.
South Carolina reigniting the former vice president and lightening the field as one billionaire calls it quits. But the other remains, threatening to douse Biden's fire on Super Tuesday. Here in Harris County, Democratic commissioners vote to bankroll legal defense for immigrants facing deportation. Angry conservatives call it confirmation of sanctuary status. And across the nation, concerns over the coronavirus grow deeper as the insidious infection claims its first American life. I'm Greg Groogan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, Bob Price, Associate Editor of Breitbart Texas. Next up, legal analyst and Houston attorney Carmen Roe. In the 3 spot, Charles Blain, founder of the advocacy group Urban Reform. Batting cleanup, well-known businessman and columnist Bill King. Next up, lawyer and Second Amendment expert Michele Maples. And closing us out on the hot corner, writer, educator, and radio host Antonio Diaz. Let's begin. Democrats in South Carolina have spoken, and the winner is former Vice President Joe Biden. Frontrunner Bernie Sanders dropping to second, and despite a third-place finish, Tom Steyer has officially dropped out of contention. The Palmetto State was seen as Biden's firewall after deeply disappointing finishes in Iowa and New Hampshire, plus a loss to Sanders in Nevada. But the largely African-American electorate came through for the 77-year-old Obama running mate.
You launched Bill Clinton, Barack Obama to the presidency. Now you launched our campaign on the path to defeating Donald Trump. This campaign is taken off.
So it's new life for Biden heading into a monster Super Tuesday. Okay, panel, who's still in the game after South Carolina, and who are the dead candidates still walking? Do any of the also-rans outside Sanders have even a whisker-thin chance at the nomination? I'm going to you, Bill King. Get us going.
So it's Biden, Bloomberg, and Sanders now, and nobody else. I think everybody else will be out of the race after Super Tuesday. And the fascinating thing to me is going to be what Bloomberg does. Is he going to attack Biden, trying to supplant him as the moderate candidate, or are both of them going to direct their fire on Sanders to try to make sure he's stopped? Because if Sanders gets the nomination, Trump is going to be reelected.
Okay, Tony, heading to you over here because look, Biden was left for dead a couple weeks ago. Now he smokes everybody, not by a little, a bunch in South Carolina. What does it look like to you now?
Well, no, it's exciting. He's got name recognition. He's been near the job before, so it's fantastic that he had a great night. But he shouldn't celebrate too hard because he's got to get to work Monday, then Tuesday. So it's going to be a 2-day party because I think there's going to be another day of reckoning across the board, Super Tuesday. I also think that the Latino vote's going to have a huge impact, especially here in Texas. Early voting has been huge for Democrats, still not surpassing Republicans yet. I'm dying to see what the numbers will be Tuesday after everybody goes to vote and see how close that primary Democratic vote gets to the Republicans. There's going to be huge surprises next. It's going to winnow. I'm shocked Steyer bowed out because everyone thought he'd be here all the way to the end, get so much money. That proves you can't really just count on money. It takes a ground game, and I don't see Biden having a strong ground game out here. And I'm tired. Let's see if Bloomberg can buy Texas. I don't think so.
Okay, Bob Price, Biden back in the game. Clearly a more formidable candidate in the fall against Trump when compared to Sanders.
Well, the gaffes continue. Last week he declared himself running for the United States Senate. This week he endorsed a state Senate candidate in South Carolina for president of the United States. So, those kind of things are going to keep weighing on people's thoughts about whether he's capable of being the president of the United States. It's interesting, Tony talked about him being close to the job before. His boss has not endorsed him yet, and he will not endorse him apparently. So there's a lot of questions everywhere about that. However, having won this primary, he'll probably see a big influx of cash now from all the anti-Bernie stuff. Bernie's got a great ground game going here in Texas, and I think there's a real chance with the Latino support that he got from Nevada in pulling it off here in Texas.
Okay, Charles Blain, you have assets on the ground in South Carolina. Really curious to hear your take, because I know you were in contact all week.
Yeah, so I called my dad yesterday bright and early in the morning to ask who he was voting for, and he had already voted, and he said Biden, who else? And so clearly South Carolina voters had that same sentiment because they supported him overwhelmingly. But what's interesting is I think we're finally seeing what happens in a primary when a party's core constituency comes out to vote. I mean, this was the first primary that they've had where there was a heavy influx of black voters because you didn't have that in other primary states. And so I think we're finally seeing what happens when that happens. But if Bernie is put forth as the nominee, I think you're going to see a big problem because what you saw in the results last night was that he didn't do better among black voters or moderates than he did previously. And so I don't think that's going to increase heading towards November. So if he does become the nominee, he's still going to have that problem.
Okay. Carmen, do you think moderate Democrats are breathing something of a sigh of relief?
I mean, I think so. I think we do have Bernie, likely Bloomberg, and Biden as the last three that we're going to have to look at. I don't think any of them are awesomely qualified. I'm not impressed by any of them. I think they all have different types of flaws. Who stays in it at the end, I don't know. But, I mean, I think that this is a situation where a 20-plus vote increase in South Carolina, even though it's South Carolina, is huge for Biden to get back into the game and draw the momentum that people are going to give him who are looking for a moderate candidate.
Okay, answer this if you feel like it, but should Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren get out of the way?
Oh, yeah, yes. I think so. They're just wasting money and their time at this point. And I think everybody on this panel is correct. It is a Sanders, Bloomberg, and I'm sorry, Biden yeah. race. It's too early. And so the other people, I mean, I don't quite know what the agenda is. Why are they holding out? I don't know if they are interested in perhaps a journalist career or some sort of other
vice presidency.
Or the vice president or some sort of cabinet position. So it'll be interesting I'm interested in what Tulsi Gabbard has up her sleeve.
Okay, Tony, the Latino vote in Texas, does it split along generational lines? You know, the Bidens, Clintons have always done well with the traditional polls like Biden. And then there are those who are really excited by Bernie Sanders.
Well, I will say this. The problem quantifying the Latino vote is that no one gets it right. Because every time I hear a survey, they don't really give a nuanced approach. So, for example, you'll hear that white, older voters who own homes in the suburbs are voting one way, and they just say all Latinos. I think there's going to be a lot of surprises. What I'm really looking at is how many new voters come into the mix. And honestly, the Bushes had created a big lock on the Latino vote in Texas. Trump has destroyed that. So there's a lot of votes that can go anywhere now. So those old myths are being shattered. I can't wait till this new myth where the Latino platform will shape who's president, and additionally, you're going to see some real surprises up and down that ballot come Super Tuesday here.
Okay, we saw a poll this week where Bloomberg had risen to 19%. That put him in third in Texas. How well does he have to do in Texas on Super Tuesday, Bill?
Well, Bloomberg has the great luxury of not having to raise money, so he can stay in the race regardless of what the results is. I think the question, we're going to see a lot about what Bloomberg's character is really like here, because he got into this because Biden was going to implode and not be able to beat Sanders. Now, with just the three of them in there, is he going to be the person that tries to implode Biden, or is he going to say, no, I'm going to concentrate my fire on Sanders, because that's how you defeat Trump, if that's what Bloomberg's real objective is?
Okay, we're going to talk more about it later. When we come back, we are going to talk about what's ahead on Super Tuesday, both here and across the country, plus a controversial new use for your county tax dollars. Legal aid for immigrants here facing deportation. That topic on our table soon, so stick around.
But this moment is a reminder of what qualities we need in a president and what qualities are sorely lacking in the one we have.
Senator Elizabeth Warren campaigning here in Houston last night, looking for a good showing in the Lone Star State. However, by Wednesday, the once gargantuan Democratic field will likely be whittled down dramatically, with the money tank running close to empty and precious few delegates to show for their effort. Could we soon be looking at just Bernie, Biden, and the billionaire with the bank to stick around? We were talked a little bit about that before. What do you think, Charles Blain?
So, I think they're going to, but before Super Tuesday, I don't see too many more people getting out, but I think we're going to start to see the trickle out. If they are as concerned about Bernie heading into November as they say they are, because they don't think that he's going to be able to win because of, his crazy positions. Biden last night said that he's, the only actual Democrat. If they're actually that concerned about Bernie, these other guys are going to get out, because every single time that they eat away a small percentage, they're taking that away from Biden, or they're taking it away from Bloomberg. They're not taking it away from Bernie.
Okay, with all that diversity, and we ended up with a bunch of white guys again. Go ahead, Bill, and I'll go to Bob.
First of all, a bunch of old white guys is not that bad a thing. Hating on all those white guys. The fascinating thing to me about this is that, Trump took over the Republican Party. Trump wasn't even vaguely a Republican. He's not even vaguely a conservative. I mean, a bunch of his positions are very sort of in the middle of the political spectrum. And now we've got Bernie, who's really not a Democrat, potentially taking over the Democratic Party and dragging it farther to the left. Sort of the traditional Republicans and Democrats are getting left out in these contests, and I think it's because neither party is speaking to the American people anymore.
Okay, I promised to go to Bob, but I want to ask Carmen this. Should Lizzie stay in? It's her inclination to fight till the last dog is dead. I mean, to have a female voice in this?
No. No, I don't think just being there as a token woman is an important thing as much as actually getting some traction and speaking to women across the country and getting them to support her. And so I don't think that's happened yet. And so why do we have 3 white men? Because clearly this country is not ready for something different. And I think that's what we're actually seeing, which is disappointing, of course, but it's something that we all need to address and be aware of. So,
Bob, quickly, I want to go to Tony.
So you're agreeing with Bernie that a woman can't win the day? Okay, I think she should stay in. We need her in there to beat up Bernie. We need her in there to beat up Mini Mike. I think she plays an important role in this, and we've got to have a Native American in the race.
Final word, Tony.
Klobuchar and Warren need to stay in. I really do love what they bring to the table, especially at the last debate. I mean, she made Bloomberg have to change his policy on NDAs. I think it's healthy for the Democrats, and I think our party needs to be the one that examines all these issues deeply, profoundly, no stupid nicknames, deep policies, and talk about racism out in the open.
Leaving it there. Up next, we feel the burn one-on-one here in the Bayou City. My conversation with the front-running Democratic socialist on health care, fossil fuel jobs, and wooing moderate Texans to his brand of Democratic socialism. That's coming up, so stay with us.
In November, we're going to defeat Trump here in Texas.
And funded health care for all, free university education, deep cuts in America's military, big new taxes on the wealthy, and the elimination of fossil fuels sooner rather than later. Unless you've been under a rock, you probably have a good grasp of Bernie Sanders' vision for the nation's future. I sat down with the Democratic frontrunner and asked how he hoped to convince more than 500,000 Texans to relinquish their jobs here at ground zero of the global fossil fuel industry.
Because we have established an unprecedented just transition program for those people involved in fossil fuel. Look, the workers on the oil rigs, the workers in the oil industry, the gas industry, they're not my enemies. I have the strongest lifetime pro-worker voting record in the United States Congress, and we're going to protect those workers. But here is the bottom line. What the scientists now tell us is that climate change is an existential threat to our planet, not just in America, but in China, in Russia, in India. The entire world is going to have to come together and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And by the way, the program that I have outlined will create up to 20 million good-paying jobs, and we put billions of dollars in there to make sure that workers will continue to have income, continue to have health care, continue to have job training and the education they need to get the good-paying jobs that are out there.
Senator, Houston is home to the world's biggest medical center, and Mayor Bloomberg has said outright he believes single payer will crater the economy and drive hospitals into bankruptcy. I'm guessing you think he's wrong.
Mayor Bloomberg is dead wrong. Here is the bottom line. We are the only major country on earth, the only one, not to guarantee health care to all people. And as you know, here in Texas, you've got a lot of people who are uninsured, underinsured, and cannot afford the outrageous cost of health care in America today. We're spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. In some cases, we're spending 10 times more for the same exact prescription drugs that the pharmaceutical industry sells in Canada or in Mexico. That is insane. A Medicare for all single-payer system, which is simply over 4 years an expansion of Medicare, will guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child and save the average person in this country very substantial sums of money. People will continue to go to any doctor they want, go to any hospital they want, but they'll pay less for comprehensive health care.
Senator, you have never run away from the term social democrat. There are some moderates here who hear that term and it makes them uncomfortable. How do you get them comfortable?
Well, I think one way to do that is to explain that in many ways we're living in a socialist society right now. When Donald Trump was a private businessman, for example, in New York, he received $800 million in tax breaks and subsidies to build luxury housing. The Walmart is owned by the Walton family, the wealthiest family in America. They pay their workers wages that are so low that you and every other person in this country is subsidizing the wealthiest family because the workers there have to go on Medicaid and food stamps and public housing. That's called corporate socialism. So what we have now, as Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us, we have socialism for the rich, but rugged individualism for the poor and everybody else. What I want to do is use federal resources to help working families, raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Healthcare for all is a human right, making public colleges and universities tuition-free, demanding that the wealthy and large corporations like Amazon, which last year did not pay a nickel in federal income tax, start paying their fair share of taxes.
Okay, panel, you feeling the boom?
That was good.
All right.
That was good.
Hey, Michele Maples, family, pipeline, business, doesn't sound good.
Absolutely not. Bernie came to Houston and basically said, we're going to wipe out your entire economy. This transition plan, what is it, Bernie? What is the plan? There was no how. This is how I am going to do this. What he is going to do is he is going to tank the U.S. economy. Hundreds of thousands of Texans are going to be without jobs. In Houston, for this blue city, this is Bloomberg and Biden's town because Bernie Sanders will absolutely leave hundreds of thousands jobless.
Okay, Tony, did that interview win the all-important Diaz endorsement?
Let me put it this way. I'm so proud of him for not saying, and Saudi Arabia will pay for this, because I'm stunned that all of a sudden Republicans want some deep analysis of budgets when all Trump had to say is that he would build a wall and Mexico would pay for it. And that seemed to be enough for Republicans at that time. Bernie's going to come to Texas if he's the nominee and explain that and meet with business people. Let's have a real discussion. Let's get to real issues. And let's help real Texas families right now. Love it.
Your take, Bill King.
Well, first of all, I'm going to pay for Tony to take Economics 101. This program is
free college.
Absolutely nonsense. You know, David Brooks once said about Trump that he was the wrong answer to the right questions, and that's the way I feel about Sanders. Sanders is raising some very important questions, like why are we paying more for pharmaceuticals in the country? But the answer to that is to allow Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate, not to socialize the entire health industry.
Okay, 15 seconds, Bob.
Well, first back to Tony. Mexico is paying for Trump's wall with 26,000 National Guard troops on the southern border and the United States border.
Tricky math.
Under the president, we have become energy independent. This man is going to threaten our energy independence, and that threatens high-paying jobs, that threatens high revenue for the federal government.
And national security.
Got to leave it there. Still ahead, when corporations hurt the health and livelihoods of folks in Harris County, he makes them pay. A job review for County Attorney Vince Ryan when we come back. Welcome back. Here on What's Your Point, we dish out plenty of grief, but we also take the time to deliver credit when credit is due. When the health and well-being of Harris County residents has come under assault by pollution or contamination, Harris County Attorney Vince Ryan has been a relentless, effective warrior for public welfare. Whether it was his office's role in convincing the EPA to remove the San Jacinto River dioxin pits, or the historic $29 million cash settlement wrenched from the company responsible, Ryan's message is clear: polluters, big or small, and Harris County will pay a price.
We go after some of the biggest and baddest corporate polluters is because, as you just alluded to, it sends a message.
And it's not just polluters. The county attorney's office under Ryan has sued the opioid industry, human traffickers operating massage parlors, retailers of dangerous synthetic marijuana, and now a new perpetrator, pharmaceutical companies overcharging vulnerable Houstonians. Ryan hits them all where it hurts, the wallet. Carmen, this new case against multiple pharmaceutical companies, is that a good role for a county attorney to play?
Absolutely. Look, the truth is, just like what Vince Ryan said, he's one of the only people who could go after these huge multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies. And the truth is a lot of this is criminal action that the FBI and people like that don't have the resources or don't spend the time on until somebody like Vince Ryan really exposes them in a big way. So I think we're very lucky to have a county attorney that goes after these people. I mean, this situation, they're saying that they increased the prices on some of these generic pharmaceuticals by 1,000%. That's unbelievable, and it hurts the weakest of our community members here in Houston.
Tony, your take on this?
I think it's excellent. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. I'm sure a lot of the families watching the show right now got to sit every morning, every once a week. I remember when my dad was alive, we'd have to put all the pills in an order. We're talking about 7 to 10 pills. I'd have to call to find out how much they actually cost. And luckily, my dad had a master's degree, Chicano, sticking up for him. Not every family does. I love it to see government sticking up for the people, but let's get something straight. Just like Bernie said, this is hyper-capitalism. How dare these pharmaceutical companies shake down hard-working families whose lives are on the line, whose well-being is shaped by every single day. Good job for Vince Ryan, and I applaud any politician, Republican or Democrat, that stands up for all of our families this way.
Michele Maples, I got to ask you, because you and your family run, a business that could be hit by a lawsuit from a county attorney if you, in their view, run afoul of regulations. Do you think Vince Ryan has overstepped?
No, not at all. There are regulations in place for a reason. And I know Axis Pipeline Construction Company, my dad doesn't pay me to say that. I should hit him up though. We all live in fear of pollution. I mean, as an attorney working for my dad, we go back and forth with these big companies on pollution and on those indemnities. And we do that for a reason, because we want to make sure that the environment is taken care of. The last thing we want is to build a faulty pipeline that then affects an entire community. That is the last thing any of us want. These regulations are great. They need to be enforced. And the majority of companies abide by them, and we have a full safety program to avoid any sort of pollution, contamination.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Still ahead, floodwaters in the Bayou City without a cloud in the sky, the fallout from that crippling water main collapse, and any lessons to be learned when we return. Welcome back. It's not just presidential candidates vying for your vote on Super Tuesday. Two prominent Houston Democrats in particular are looking to unseat Senator John Cornyn in November. We asked both why they are better fit for a critical job.
Experience matters. I'm the only Democratic candidate who has actually served in Congress, who's run statewide before, and that experience has proven to be invaluable on the campaign trail, and it'll be extremely helpful as a member of the United States Senate. I think people can look at my record in Congress and see that I have the necessary fight, that I was willing to stand up to the most corrupt politician in America at that time, Tom DeLay, and break a truce that had been placed on the filing of ethics complaints, and it led to him being universally admonished. And that's the same fight and the same ethical standard I'll take back with me to Washington, D.C., and I really think that's what people here in Texas are looking for now.
I would deliver a message that's really central to them, which happens to be that I'm running to represent all of Texas and to represent the U.S. so that we can actually begin to deliver real results for people's lives. I think the days of just hearing people make have to come to an end. People are tired of politics as usual and need to see results, whether it's access to health care coverage or economic opportunity for all people, no matter where you live, what your background. We have to have leaders who have the ability to, what I call walk and chew gum, which means that you have the ability to react and respond, but also to have a vision and execute on that vision.
You know, you're pretty much snake bit when the city where you live is traumatized once again by floodwaters with barely a cloud in the sky. Such is the reality in Houston, Texas, where the failure of a massive 96-inch water line turned roads into rivers, disrupted traffic, triggered school cancellations, and forced millions of residents to observe a water boil order. Okay, panel, what does this painful event tell us? Is it isolated or a symptom of a much larger problem? Let's go to Bill King on infrastructure.
Well, look, I think we all know we've been massively underinvesting in Houston's infrastructure for decades. This is not just this administration, it's several administrations before it. And we're going to continue to have these kind of problems. This particular incident, I have some real question marks about. I've heard 2 or 3 different stories about what caused it. We need to look into this because a 96-inch water line suddenly bursting just doesn't happen. And the mayor said something about it being 35 years old. That's not very old for a water line of this kind of construction. Something went wrong here, and we need to understand what it is. I don't think that's going to happen because the city never goes in and really investigates and figures out why we have these kind of problems. But to me, that would really be an important thing to do.
Charles, I know you've been studying this issue.
Yes, and Bill's right. My research shows that they said that water lines typically last like 40 to 70 years. So it's kind of crazy that something like this would happen. But I was also looking at an infrastructure report that said that a lot of the water infrastructure in the country has like a D grade rating because of lack of maintenance and failures and things like that. So I'm not too surprised by this. And the city apparently noticed there was an issue. It was reported that they spent $7.5 million in the past 5 years upgrading and doing different things to this line. Ultimately, we were, uncomfortable for 48 hours. No one died. Flint, Michigan didn't have water for 5 years. So I think that it's a big issue, but city should take care of it.
Michele Maples, different kind of pipeline. Yeah. But any thoughts?
How does this happen? How for 48 hours were we without water? This is the issue with this administration. Is we are no better off than we were pre-Harvey. And why is that? And that's because no steps have been taken to work on drainage. Why didn't this water drain quicker? Well, because we don't keep up with our drainage. And then there was this big drainage tax, if everybody remembers, that we voted to impose on ourselves. Where's that money gone?
Okay, Tony, this seemed to hit a largely Latino part of town.
Well, and I think there's also a bigger picture. What you call the snake bit, Houston snake bit. We're making national news for this flood on a sunny day, for floods now every 500 years or every 2 years. We had an explosion in that, you had Spring Branch, which is now a predominantly Latino neighborhood. You had a plant just exploding out of thin air. You had a mercury scare a little before that. Add to all these different factors, there's a message of a slow drip of people not thinking Houston is the destination. We've gone from most diverse city to booming city. We've got to really then think about how we message this, but also what else is Houston good at, and we need to put the love back into Houston as a perception and make things work the right way.
Good food for thought. All right, the number of deaths associated with coronavirus is now approaching 3,000 worldwide. The first fatality on American soil reported in the last 24 hours. We're going to talk about it when we come back. Welcome back. Triggering a record-breaking plunge on Wall Street. Word this week that a further spread of the coronavirus in the United States, for that matter, the entire world, is a near certainty. During a press conference with leading health officials, the president conceded the level of infection could get worse before the crisis abates. Here in Houston, Democratic presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg went on the attack, saying Mr. Trump has dropped the ball on preparation.
President Trump was briefed on the coronavirus 2 months ago, but he buried his head in the sand, and his failure to prepare is crippling our ability to respond now that it's at our doorstep.
The number of deaths associated with the coronavirus is now approaching 3,000 worldwide, with the first fatality on American soil reported within the past 24 hours in Washington state. Bob Price, I'm eager to hear what you have to say about this.
Well, Bloomberg's statement was absolutely ridiculous. The president took action early, and because of that action, we have not seen the rampant spread that other countries have experienced with this. That said, we need to take this situation seriously, but not panic on it. The thing that's most concerning to me is in California, you've now had 4 cases, in the Pacific Northwest, you've had 4 cases of the virus being contracted without any contact with foreign travel or with somebody who's been infected with it. There's no explanation for these 4 cases. That's very concerning. You also have a nursing home in the Washington area that has 52 patients that are exposed to the virus and have symptoms of the virus. 2 have tested positive. That could be very disturbing, particularly when you look at a nursing home and the age of the patients there.
Carmen, what's your take?
I don't know what action we're talking about. I don't think anybody's taking this as seriously as they should. All I know is that Trump has had time to tweet and make disparaging comments about all these Democratic candidates, but he's taken no time to talk about and really educate people about the coronavirus. I mean, our stock market, everything in this country hangs in the balance if that comes into the United States, the way that it has taken its toll on China. I mean, there are areas that are coming to a screeching halt in big business that's going to affect this economy, and that, of course, affects the health and safety of everyone in the country. I don't see enough action on this at all.
Yeah, Bill King, Elizabeth Warren spoke extensively about this last night and the impact it could have on the economy. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is a panic, is what I think it is. I think Trump did the right thing. I think that Bloomberg's criticism was misplaced. Look, 100,000 people have died from the flu, just the regular flu, since the coronavirus outbreak. 100,000 people have died from malaria, mostly children in Africa. 250,000 people have died in automobile accidents. If you want to make yourself safe, don't text while you drive today.
Okay, but are we in the infancy of this infection? I mean, could it get worse? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think if people don't take the right precautions, you know, if they don't do minor things like washing your hands and, you know, being careful when you interact with people, you know, I think if you look at a couple of years, I wouldn't say that no president's ever going to be prepared for something like this to come, and then they just kind of react with the way that they do with the experts around them. But if you look back in 2014, Obama got slammed by the media for his handling of the Ebola outbreak and failure to update CDC guidelines for returning federal employees coming from Ebola-ravaged nations. So, I mean, I think we see this over and over again, but of course it could be an issue if people don't take the proper precautions and protect themselves and protect others.
Tony, 20 seconds, leave some time for Michelle.
I'd like to be as fair as possible with President Trump, just because this is scary. It could be very consequential. But it did appear that he was more worried about the effects of this announcement and real facts as it would affect the stock market, which could imply that it would affect his campaign chances. I think this is really showing his shortcomings as far as being a president. He needs to get past that and just deal with the facts and tell us straight on what's going on.
Quick final word.
I think this is overblown. I think there's a lot of dramatics here, and I think Bill got it right. I mean, don't get in your car today if you're worried about dying, because you are much more likely to die behind the wheel than you are of the coronavirus.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. I hope you're right. Still ahead, Harris County will soon provide free legal aid to immigrants fighting deportation. While Judge Lina Hidalgo calls it good public policy, a good many citizens picking up the tab may disagree. That's our topic after the break. Welcome back. By a 3-2 vote this week along strict partisan lines, the Democratic majority on Harris County's Commissioners Court voted to offer free legal services to immigrants fighting to stay in this country. Judge Lina Hidalgo says she knows of no other county that is currently offering immigration lawyers at public expense.
The idea is for this to help us chip away at a big problem that faces our own community, because it leads to families being torn apart and it leads to folks being plucked away from jobs that contribute to our economy.
Hidalgo says Harris County's new immigrant legal aid program will ultimately save lives by preventing deportation of immigrants back to countries where they face grave danger. Tony, jump in here.
She's joined other Texas cities that have done this already. Her heart's in the right place. She's joined a mayor that has declared that we are friendly to immigrants, who said that if you're hit during Harvey, he doesn't care about your status. She is now joining Chief Acevedo, who's been calling out Republican officials for not acting on gun control. She is stepping now into her own as a leader. Now, I do think, though, that there's going to be some pushback, obviously, as you're going to see from Republicans early on. But then two things. One, she should meet with the constituents to let them know where the money will come from and what the benefits will be. So that's a great way for her to meet with the community. And secondly, all of a sudden, Republicans want science and facts. They were fine with building this wall, so this is better than dumping billions of dollars on some wall that does nothing.
How about some pushback right now, Bob Price?
Yeah, so first off, as Tony said, the judge needs to do some reading. There are plenty of other counties that are providing legal assistance. ICE provides $2 million, over $2 million to Harris County for housing illegal immigrants in the jails here in Harris County. In addition to that, they provide a list of pro bono lawyers who will help them with their cases. They provide a weekly Know Your Rights seminar for the people that they're holding in their facilities, and they're providing access to legal resource information within the facility. Democrats are talking out of both sides of their mouth on this issue. When you look at former Sheriff Garcia, who not only utilized the 287G program but expanded it, and then Sheriff Gonzalez, who ended the 287G program but didn't change a single thing within how the jail operates in connection with ICE. Over 4,000 illegal immigrant detainers have been honored by the Harris County Sheriff's Department this year. ICE goes after criminals, and 90% of these are criminals. They need to be removed from the country, and we need to quit wasting taxpayer money to defend them.
Carmen, I'm interested in your take. Spending tax dollars for civil cases for non-citizens. Your thoughts?
This whole thing is offensive on a level that I can't even address. I mean, first of all, she's not saying she wants to provide lawyers. She's saying that she wants to provide top-level lawyers to immigrants because apparently the lawyers that are helping them now are not good enough. So she wants to make sure they get the best lawyers so they can stay in the country. The problem with that is we don't provide the best lawyers because we can't to criminal defendants who are accused here in Harris County. Individual citizens who may or may not have committed any crime at all are sitting in jail utilizing our system of counsel, which is limited at best, and they don't get what she's trying to provide to individuals who are not citizens in this country. I just think it's offensive. But the other thing to keep in mind is that immigration cases are complicated because the law is complicated. They last for years, and they involve a lot of manpower that we cannot provide financially, period.
Which Trump is making worse. She should bill Trump for this. So after this, she should bill Trump for all this.
Okay, real quick.
The problem
Charles,
is
does this,
she's billing us.
Does this just set in concrete the sanctuary status of Harris County?
I think it does, because when you look at other public entities that do this, they fall in line with that. Seattle, Chicago, Los Angeles City Council, New York City Council, Austin passed $200,000 a couple years ago to do this. So yeah, all these entities that have claimed themselves to be sanctuary cities, counties, whatever the case may be, have done this, and so she's kind of pushing in that direction as well. And I'd also like to note that all these other entities that have done this have been in states in which governors have been in opposition to the president's immigration policy. So in a state like this, where you have Austin and now Houston doing it, I wonder if the governor's going to step in and try to bar some action of public entities spending money to defend illegal immigrants.
Certainly handed the Republicans an issue. Bill, thoughts?
So look, I'm against mass deportations. I'm against deporting dreamers. I've personally contributed to funds like this. Using taxpayer money, the power to take away your house, to extract money out of you, to give it to a private cause like this is an abuse of power, and it absolutely needs to be stopped. And let me tell you what, there's going to be a huge consequence. The Democrats are trying to give Commissioner's Court back to the Republicans, raising taxes 8%, letting criminals go, and now spending public tax dollars. Look, if those commissioners really want to support this, they can write their own personal checks for it like I do instead of making people pay for it who don't want to pay for it.
This is going to help the people watching your parents. That's what it's going to do, not criminals. People watching your kids and your family and your elders.
I'm sure we're going to talk about
it. So you don't have the right to foreclose on my house to take your money to do that. Why don't we just get, what about cancer? What about the rapists? What about the murderers?
Another edition of This Don't Smell Right. And all that mysterious African art is making a return appearance. Stay with us, watch your point, and all the fireworks. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We call this segment This Don't Smell Right, a discussion of evolving events that emit the unmistakable odor that seems to tell us something's really off track here. First of all, a return visit to that mysterious trove of African art still sitting in a county-owned warehouse controlled by Commissioner Rodney Ellis. After more than 2 weeks, two burning questions remain completely unanswered. Who actually owns the 1,200-piece collection, and why is it all being stored at public expense? Gosh, even the Chronicle editorial board is asking politely. Second, District Attorney Kim Ogg, who this week announced that at least 69 drug convictions involving former HPD Detective Gerald Goins, ringleader of the deadly Harding Street raid, will likely be overturned and defendants declared innocent because of false testimony. What doesn't smell right here is the lack of oversight on Goins' narcotics squad. Wasn't anybody watching this guy as he ruined lives? And finally, back to Commissioner Ellis, who's under scrutiny for spending $314,000 tax dollars on printing and postage for 16 direct mail pieces in less than 3 months. Is it just a coincidence that the blizzard of outreach just happened to precede next week's primary election? Ellis's spokesperson says it's 100% public service. Okay, panel, take your pick. Where do I go? Raise a hand. Go, Bob.
I'll go with this mailing from the Ellis. I mean, this is unbelievable abuse of privilege of being a county commissioner. The Texas Attorney General needs to come in and look at this in addition to the county attorney's office, who's already investigating him over this art deal. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't smell right in this, and I'll yield to somebody else.
Okay, Carmen, which one did you like best?
Goings. I mean, we're edging up on hundreds of cases that are turning out to be based on lies from at least one narcotic officer. I think that there's a lot more there. I can't believe that no one thinks there's anything to see here, and that Chief Acevedo and some of the other good people who do good things every day don't want to look further into what is clearly a systemic problem in HPD, in narcotics, and in vice, and in other areas that are not being supervised the way they should be. That's how this kind of thing happens. And while everybody wants to talk about Goings only, he's not the only one, and I don't believe for a second these are all the cases that we're going to see. It just keeps happening.
Okay. Charles Blain, pick your poison.
These mailers don't smell right. I mean, I live in Rodney Ellis's precinct, and I have not received one mailer. I might have received the year-end one, but I don't recall it. But I certainly have not received 16 over the past however long. I received one at the end of the legislative session from my state representative. I received other ones, did not receive any. So I'm really curious as to who's getting these mailers, what list they're using, because maybe they're just folks who don't vote in the Republican primary that are getting them. Maybe that's why, but that would be questionable if that's the case. So.
Okay, Bill, 30 seconds.
I think the narcotics one is the one that really bothers me. I mean, the other stuff is sort of the garden variety taxpayer abuse money we're sort of used to, but this has really destroyed a bunch of innocent people's lives, and I cannot imagine that this was the isolated action of one officer. And even if it was, where are the internal controls? Where is the process that keeps a police officer from doing this? And all we've gotten is a bunch of, well, this is a bad guy and there's nobody else. We need an investigation of what actually took place in the police department.
Okay, stick around. Our panel will be right back with more as we continue to explore. That don't smell right. Stay with us. Okay, Michelle, what doesn't smell right to you?
I think both of these topics smell awful, and it shows that this city has a serious problem with corruption. Let's start with Rodney Ellis. And a private art collection being paid for by taxpayers, ridiculous. Plus the mailers. This guy is trying not to get reelected, and if Houston does not wake up, then we've got big problems. With regard to the corrupt police officer, why isn't the police union coming out, speaking out against this guy, and having a full policy and procedure in place to avoid this from ruining more lives?
20 seconds, buddy.
The mailers don't smell right. And I tell you what, it gives incumbents an unfair advantage. If I was running against someone, I would demand equal time. Anytime they spoke in public, anytime that they were at a nonprofit event, anytime their name was on a ballot.
Gotta leave it there. All right, the political discussion continues on a national level with Fox News Sunday and host Chris Wallace, who is speaking one-on-one this morning with a rejuvenated Joe Biden. On behalf of our entire crew, have a great week.